My father skipped my wedding because I married a truck driver. He thought Hux was beneath our family. Until one photo of his route made my father panic. That road led to the secret he locked away for years, and the man he mocked brought the truth home. My father skipped my wedding because I married a truck driver. He told people he had a board dinner that night, but Garron Crownover never missed anything by accident. He missed things to make a point. So after the ceremony, while my husband was still in his work shirt, and I still had rice caught in the hem of my dress, I sent my parents one simple photo. Hux was standing beside his rig, one hand on the open door, his boots dusty from the freight yard, smiling like my father's empty chair had not cut me open. 40 minutes later, my phone started shaking across the table. 11 missed calls from my father, 4 from my mother. One cold message from the family lawyer that said, "Tenley, call your father before this gets worse." They were not upset because I had married Huxley Danner. They were upset because of what was printed on the small white route sticker behind his shoulder. Cumberland Route 32B. That route went somewhere my father had spent 7 years pretending did not exist. My name is Tenley Crownover. I was 34 years old, a state elder care compliance reviewer in Knoxville, Tennessee, and for most of my life I was trained to understand 2 things: how families perform love in public and how powerful people hide cruelty inside paperwork. My father owned Crownover Haven Living, one of the most respected senior care companies in eastern Tennessee. He had glossy brochures full of smiling grandmothers, church awards on his wall, and speeches about dignity that made donors wipe their eyes. He called himself a protector of the elderly. He called Hux a man who slept behind a steering wheel. That was his exact phrase the first time I brought Hux to Sunday dinner. He did not ask Hux what kind of freight he hauled, how many miles he drove, or why half the clinics between Knoxville and the Cumberland Hills knew his first name. He looked at the crease in Hux's work pants, the sunburn on his neck, and the grease near his cuff, then said, "No Crownover daughter builds a life around a man who sleeps behind a steering wheel." My mother lowered her eyes to her plate. I had seen Blythe Crownover do that my whole life. It was her way of leaving a room without moving. I did not argue that night. I had already learned that arguing with my father only gave him a stage. Garron Crownover could turn any room into a courtroom where he was judge, witness, and victim all at once. So I reached under the table and took Hux's hand. His palm was rough, warm, and steady. My father noticed that too. He smiled like I had just confirmed every disappointment he had ever assigned to me. 3 days later, Silas Brim, our family lawyer, called me with a voice so smooth it almost sounded kind. He said, "My father wanted to help Hux transition into something more appropriate." He mentioned a small distribution company Garron could introduce him to, a safer job, cleaner hours, better optics. There was that word people use when they mean shame but want it dressed for dinner. I asked Silas if this was help or a leash. He gave a small laugh and told me, "Young wives often mistake concern for control." I told him my wedding was in 2 weeks, and the only transition happening was that my last name would no longer be used as a fence around my life. My mother came alone the week before the wedding. She arrived at my townhouse in West Knoxville wearing cream wool in September heat, holding her handbag with both hands as if our little rented living room might stain it. Hux had left early for a delivery run, so it was just the 2 of us and the hum of the refrigerator. She looked around at our secondhand furniture, the framed map of Tennessee highways Hux had hung above his desk, and the tiny glass jar where he kept loose coins for toll roads, even though most of his routes did not have tolls. She tried to smile, but she had spent too many years polishing her face into something decorative. "Tenley," she said, "your marriage is dragging old dirt onto this family." I thought she meant Hux. I thought she meant his truck, his job, his father who had worked pipe yards, his mother who sold pies at a roadside market every Thanksgiving. I told her that if the family could be ruined by a good man with a CDL and a mortgage, maybe it was weaker than she thought. Her face changed for half a second. Not anger. Fear. Then she stood, adjusted her bracelet, and told me she hoped I understood what roads did. They brought things back. We were married in a small hall behind a Methodist church near Fountain City, with white folding chairs, grocery store flowers, and a cake Hux's sister had decorated herself. It was not a Crownover wedding. It was better. Nobody there looked over my shoulder for a better conversation. Nobody asked whether the photographer had captured the right donors. Hux's drivers came in clean shirts and stiff shoes, smelling faintly of diesel and wintergreen mints. A few inspectors from my office sent a plant. My parents' chairs sat empty in the front row because I had left them there on purpose. Some absences should not be hidden. Hux noticed me staring at them before the vows. He leaned close and whispered, "Empty chairs still tell the truth." I almost cried then, not because the chairs hurt, but because for the first time someone did not ask me to pretend they did not. When the ceremony ended, I walked out of that hall married to a man my father had dismissed in one sentence, and I felt lighter than I had felt in the Crownover house my entire childhood. 2 days later, I drove to the freight yard where Hux parked his rig when he was between runs. He was an independent medical supply carrier, not the kind of long-haul driver who disappeared for weeks. His work was more exact than people imagined. Oxygen tanks to rehab centers, refrigerated medication cases to rural clinics, wheelchair parts, wound care boxes, emergency generator batteries for nursing homes during storms. His truck was not glamorous, but it carried things people needed when nobody had time to be impressed. I took the picture because he looked happy. He was leaning against the driver's side, hair windblown, sleeves rolled up, smiling at me like I was still walking down the aisle. Behind him, on the side frame near the door, was a small laminated route marker from the dispatch system. Cumberland Route 32B. I did not notice it. I was looking at my husband. I sent the photo to my parents with one line, "You missed a beautiful day." Then I put my phone in my purse and let Hux drive me to a diner where the waitress knew his coffee order without asking. The calls began before the biscuits came. At first, I thought maybe my mother had finally broken. Maybe the photo had done what the empty chairs could not. Maybe seeing Hux's smile had made something human move inside her. But when I stepped outside and called my father back, he did not mention the wedding. He did not ask whether I was happy. He did not even insult Hux. His first question was, "White, where was that truck parked?" His second was, "How long has he had that route?" His third was the one that changed the air around me. "Has he delivered to Ashbel?" I asked him what Ashbel was. He paused too long. Garron Crownover was a man who could answer reporters, judges, pastors, and angry families without blinking. But on that call, silence got to him before language did. Finally he said, "Do not play games with me, Tenley." I looked through the diner window at Hux, paying the bill with a $10 note and a smile, and I understood that my father was not afraid of the man. He was afraid of the road. I asked Hux about Ashbel that night. We sat at our kitchen table with leftover cake between us and the photo open on my phone. He frowned and pulled an old delivery sheet from the canvas bag he carried everywhere. Hux kept paper records because he did not trust systems that could crash, glitch, or be edited by people who had never driven a mountain road in freezing rain. Ashbel Care Annex was on his Cumberland Route 32B, but it was not a normal facility stop. He described it as a low stone building tucked behind a private rehab property near the ridge. No real sign, no public entrance, just a coded gate, and staff who always seemed surprised when supplies arrived on time. The invoices were paid through a foundation attached to Crownover Haven Living, but the receiving code did not match any public facility number Hux had seen. "I figured rich people had rich people rules," he said. But there was one strange thing. He turned the page and tapped a signature line. The printed resident reference was only one letter and one last name. I. Crownover. I did not sleep that night. In my family, the name Ione Crownover had always been spoken like a door already closed. My grandmother, my father's mother, was supposedly alive somewhere in North Carolina, estranged by choice, bitter and unreachable. That was the story. She had refused contact after some old business disagreement, my father said. She did not want birthdays, holidays, photographs, or visits. When I was 10, I asked why there was no picture of her in the house, and my father told me some people remove themselves from family and deserve the silence that follows. I believed him because children do not know when a parent is handing them a lie polished smooth by repetition. But here was my husband's delivery sheet, quiet and ordinary, saying, "Aye, aye." Crownover received supplies at a hidden annex 40 miles from my house. My hands felt cold. Not because I had proof yet, because I had a shape, and every woman who works compliance learns to respect the shape before the fact. The next morning, I did what I was allowed to do and nothing more. That mattered. I did not log into a state system. I did not search private records from my office. I sat at my own kitchen table, on my own laptop, on my own time, and opened public databases any citizen could read. Licensed care facilities, property records, probate filings, business registrations, Ashbel Care. Annex did not appear where a place like that should appear. The main rehab property did, under another company, but the back building had been described in records as storage and administrative space. That was not proof of crime by itself. Plenty of places were badly labeled. But badly labeled buildings do not order oxygen regulators, specialized nutrition, and pressure relief mattresses every month under a private resident code. Then I found the probate filing. 7 years earlier, Garron Crownover had petitioned for emergency guardianship over Ione Crownover, claiming advanced cognitive decline, isolation risk, and inability to manage personal or financial affairs. I read the words 3 times before they became real. My grandmother had not disappeared from the family. My father had taken legal control of her. When I showed Hux, he did not speak for a long while. That was one thing I loved about him. He did not rush to fill shock with noise. He read the petition slowly, lips pressed together, finger moving down the screen. "This says she was evaluated by a doctor from his own network," he said. I nodded. "And this says the guardian can restrict contact if contact causes distress." I nodded again because my throat had closed around my voice. In elder care, words like safety and distress can protect vulnerable people. They can also be used as beautiful locks. My father knew that better than anyone. He had built a career teaching families that difficult decisions were still love if you signed the right forms. For the first time, I wondered how many of those forms had started as love and ended as ownership. My grandmother was not an old roomer. She was a woman in a back building on my husband's route, and my father had flinched because a truck driver had come close enough to carry her name home on a piece of paper. My mother called that afternoon. Not my father. Blythe. Her voice was carefully soft, which meant someone had already told her I was looking. She asked if we could meet, and I said she could come to the house. When she arrived, she did not sit. She stood in the same living room where she had warned me before the wedding, but this time she looked smaller, as if the cream wool and pearls could not hold her shape. I said I knew about Ione. Her hand tightened around her purse strap. She whispered, "You need to stop." Not, "That is not true." Not, "Your father would never." Just stop. I asked her how long she had known. She turned her face toward the window where Hux's route map hung over the desk. "Your grandmother was difficult," she said. "She was making dangerous choices." I asked if one of those choices was refusing to hand over money. My mother's mouth trembled. Then she said the sentence that told me she had chosen the locked door and learned to call it peace. "Your father did what he believed was necessary to keep everything from falling apart." People think fear makes people innocent. It does not. Fear can explain a silence, but it does not wash it clean. I looked at my mother and saw a woman who had been living beside a crime so long that she had started seeing it as weather. She was not the storm, maybe, but she had packed umbrellas for everyone except the woman outside. She told me not to involve Hux. She said my husband did not understand families like ours. I almost laughed then, because families like ours were not complicated in the way my mother wanted them to be. They were simple. Someone had power. Someone else had a locked room. Everything after that was decoration. When she left, she paused at the door and said, Roads bring things back, Tenley. Sometimes they bring them back ruined. I told her roads also bring medicine, oxygen, and witnesses. She flinched, and this time she did not hide it fast enough. A week later, Hux had another delivery to Ashbel. I did not ask him to do anything. I made that clear. He was not my spy. He was a driver doing a job, and that line mattered as much as any truth we wanted. He carried the order, scanned the gate code, unloaded 2 oxygen concentrators and 3 boxes of dressings, and waited for the receiving nurse to sign. That should have been all. But while he stood in the service hall, an elderly woman in a wheelchair near the sunroom turned her head. Hux told me later that her eyes were what stopped him. Pale green, direct, and so familiar it felt like hearing my name in another room. She looked at his name tag, then at his wedding band, and said, "Are you the driver who married Tenley?" Hux almost dropped the clipboard. The staff aide behind the chair stiffened, but the woman kept looking at him. "Tell her," she said, her voice thin but clear. The red folder was never signed. Then a care worker with silver-streaked hair stepped between them gently, not to silence the old woman, but to protect the moment from becoming obvious. Her name tag read, Tilda Rusk. She took Hux's clipboard and signed it with a hand that shook only once. Hux came home pale. He set the delivery sheet on the table like it might break. "She knew you," he said. Those 3 words hurt more than all my father's insults because they reached backward through my childhood. Ione Crownover had known me. Somewhere behind all those family stories about estrangement and bitterness, there was a grandmother who knew my name, knew I had married, and knew enough to send a message through the only person my father had underestimated completely. The red folder was never signed. Hux and I repeated the sentence until it stopped sounding like a riddle and started sounding like evidence. I called Orrin Platt the next morning. Orrin was an elder law attorney I knew by reputation, a quiet man with tired eyes and a habit of asking the question under the question. I did not tell him everything at first. I told him I had concerns about a guardianship, possible isolation, and questionable transfer of assets. He listened without interrupting. Then he said, "Bring me only what you obtained cleanly. Nothing else. If this is what you think it is, the way you enter the room matters." That sentence saved me, because I wanted to kick the door open. I wanted to call every reporter in Tennessee and tell them Garron Crownover, the saint of senior care, had hidden his own mother in a private annex while building brochures around other people's grandmothers. I wanted to walk into his office and throw the delivery sheet on his mahogany desk. But my job made anger dangerous. I worked in elder care compliance. I knew the licensing rules, I knew privacy laws, I knew investigation protocols. If I touched the wrong record, made the wrong call, or sounded like I was using state knowledge to settle a family score, my father would not have to answer for Ione. He would only have to point at me. Bitter daughter, conflict of interest, government employee abusing her position. He had probably counted on it. Men like Garron do not just hide secrets. They build traps around the people most likely to find them. So I took every piece of fury inside me and folded it into discipline. I would not be the scandal. I would be the clean edge that opened the envelope. Orrin started with the red folder, not by stealing it, not by guessing, but by following the public trail backwards. 7 years earlier, weeks before the guardianship petition, Ione Crownover's shares in the land beneath 3 Crownover Haven facilities had moved into a management trust controlled by Garron. The record showed an amendment authorizing the transfer. The signature page existed in the filed copy, but the notary stamp was strange. Orrin noticed it first. The commission number did not match the date. Not a dramatic movie clue, not a bloody fingerprint, just a small mismatch only a careful person would respect. Then Hux found something in his old route records. Before Ashbel was added to Route 32B, he had delivered to a storage office connected to Crownover Haven headquarters. One shipment, 7 years earlier, had been listed as archival legal materials. The receiver was Silas Brim's assistant. The freight description included red legal binders. Hux looked sick when he showed me. "I carried the box," he said. "Before I ever knew you, I carried part of it." I told him the truth. He had carried many things in his life. This time he had carried the thread back. The first clean door was not the newspaper. It was Adult Protective Services and the long-term care ombudsman. I filed a private citizen concern about possible isolation and questionable guardianship restrictions, and then I documented my conflict in writing before anyone could twist it. I stated plainly that I was related to the protected person, that I worked in a related field, and that I was not requesting access to any investigation. I was recusing myself from everything official before my father could accuse me of hiding in my badge. The second door belonged to Hux. He filed a formal route discrepancy report through his freight insurer and dispatch network, noting repeated medical deliveries to a location whose receiving code did not match its public classification. He did not write my father's name in anger. He attached manifests, dates, payment sources, and signatures. The third door was Oren's. He filed an emergency petition in probate court requesting an independent review of Ione's guardianship, a fresh medical evaluation, access to original signature pages, and a full accounting of assets transferred under Garron's control. It was not loud. It was worse than loud. It was proper. My father knew within days that the ground had shifted. Silas Brim called first, using the same velvet voice he had used before the wedding. He said there had been confusion around an elderly relative's care plan. He said outsiders often misunderstood private family arrangements. I told him I was not confused, and neither was the court. He warned me that a state employee should be careful about creating the appearance of pressure. I thanked him for his concern and told him all future communication should be in writing. There was a silence on the line. Smooth men hate written records. Then my father summoned me to Crownover House. That is the only word for it. He did not invite. He summoned. I went because I wanted to see his face when he realized I was no longer the daughter he could manage with disappointment. The house looked the same as always, white columns, trimmed hedges, the front porch swing nobody sat on because it looked better empty. Inside, the walls were full of photographs of charity dinners, ribbon cuttings, my father beside residents in wheelchairs, my mother smiling with women whose names she forgot before dessert. There was still no picture of my wedding. He received me in the study where he had once told me that family names were not inherited, they were maintained. Silas stood near the bookcase with a legal pad he did not write on. My mother sat by the window, hands folded, already looking at her lap. My father began with injury. He said he had tried to protect me. He said Hux had dragged me into things beyond my understanding. He said Ione was fragile, confused, and easily manipulated. Then, when I did not soften, he moved to threat. Hux's delivery contracts could be reviewed. My professional license could become complicated. My office might receive questions about conflict of interest. The court could be made to understand that a rebellious daughter was using an old woman as a weapon. He never raised his voice. He did not need to. He had spent his life making calm sound like a locked door. When he finished, I looked at Silas, then at my father, and said, "Then keep every document exactly where it is. The right people are already asking for them." My mother made a small sound, almost a gasp. My father's face did not change much, but I saw his hand tighten around the arm of the chair. That was when I understood the real secret was not simply that Ione had been hidden. It was that my father had never expected her to be heard again. Everything he had built depended on her voice being treated as a symptom. If she remembered, she was confused. If she objected, she was distressed. If she asked for Tenley, she was fixating. Paperwork can be a fence if the wrong person holds the pen. But paperwork can also become a gate when the right people read it in order. The court granted a limited emergency review. An independent physician was assigned. A temporary advocate was allowed to meet Ione without Crownover staff in the room. Oren received permission to request original documents tied to the trust amendment. The ombudsman opened a concern file. The licensing board began asking why a building described as administrative storage had a pattern of medical supply deliveries. None of this happened with sirens. It happened with emails, stamps, calls, and plain envelopes. My father had always feared scandal. He should have feared process. The public collapse came 2 weeks later at the Silver Lantern Gala, and if I had written the irony myself, it would have seemed too heavy-handed. Crownover Haven Living was honoring my father for a lifetime of elder dignity. There were gold programs on every table, a string quartet near the stage, and a crystal lantern award placed under a spotlight like a small transparent temple. The room was full of hospital donors, church leaders, board members, local news cameras, and families who believed my father was the kind of man who protected vulnerable people from neglect. My invitation arrived by courier, not mail. My mother called twice to make sure I understood the importance of unity. I went in a plain navy dress with no state badge, no files, no speech, and no husband on my arm. Hux was working. That felt right. The route had started this, and the route would finish what my father's house had tried to bury. Before the speeches, my mother found me near the hallway leading to the coat room. For once, she did not look polished. She looked old, not in her face, but in her fear. She took my hand and whispered, "I was young when it started." I looked at her, and some foolish part of me still wanted that to become an apology. She said Ione fought Garron about the first facility. She said Ione wanted employee ownership, lower fees for residents, and limits on how much family money could be pulled out of care homes. Garron called her unstable. Silas called her vulnerable. Blythe called it complicated. I thought if I stayed quiet, it would pass, my mother said. Her eyes filled, and for 1 second I saw the girl she had been, before all that silk and silence hardened around her. Then she gripped my hand tighter and said, "Please do not do this tonight. Let the award happen. Let your father step down privately later. We can keep some dignity." There it was. Not confession. Negotiation. I gently took my hand back. "You are still asking the wrong woman to be quiet," I said. She closed her eyes like I had struck her, but all I had done was return her to herself. The speeches began at 8. A pastor praised my father's compassion. A hospital executive called him a visionary. A former resident's son read from a card and thanked Crownover Haven for treating his mother like family. I stood near the back of the ballroom, close enough to see my father's smile, and far enough not to belong to it. At first, everything went exactly the way he wanted. Laughter at the right moments, applause before the award, cameras angled toward his good side. Then the room changed in the strange modern way rooms change now, not with a shout but with a glow, phones lighting up under tables, one donor leaning toward another, a board member stepping out through the side door, a woman near the stage covering her mouth as she read. The local news site had published a report that probate court had ordered an emergency review of Ione Crownover's guardianship and a financial accounting of trust assets tied to Crownover Haven Living. At the same time, the licensing board confirmed it was reviewing Ashbel Care Annex after freight records showed years of medical deliveries to a building not registered for that level of care. No wild accusation, no daughter's interview, just public filings, court orders, and documented route records placed side by side until the truth had nowhere left to hide. My father was walking toward the podium when someone handed him a phone. I saw the moment he read the headline. His face did not collapse all at once. It emptied by degrees. First, the smile left, then the color, then the certainty. He looked toward Silas, but Silas was already reading his own screen. My mother stood frozen by a table of white roses. The crystal lantern waited on the stage for a man being honored for elder dignity, while his own mother's confinement became public in the palms of 300 guests. Then the ballroom doors opened behind me. I turned, and there was Hux. He was not in a suit. He wore his dark work shirt with the company patch, the sleeves rolled, hair wind-blown from the road. Beside him stood Tilda Rusk and a court-appointed advocate. Between them, using a walker with slow, fierce care, was Ione Crownover, my grandmother, alive, thin, silver-haired, wearing a blue sweater and an expression that did not ask permission from anyone in the room. No one spoke at first. That was the power of it. If Hux had shouted, my father could have called it an attack. If I had walked her in, he could have called it a daughter's theater. But Hux was only the driver who had finished his route, and Ione was only the woman my father had turned into a file, standing in public while the file opened around him. She looked smaller than I imagined and stronger than I was ready for. Her eyes found me first. I could not move. 30 years of family story fell away, and behind it stood a woman who had not abandoned me, had not erased herself, had not chosen silence. Someone had chosen it for her. Hux brought her to the back row and stood beside her with both hands folded in front of him, dusty boots on the ballroom carpet my mother had helped choose. My father stared at them from the stage. I do not think he saw the guests anymore. He saw a road he had not controlled, a driver he had dismissed, and a mother he had failed to keep hidden. He got me alone in a service hallway 10 minutes later. Powerful men always think the real world is the room without witnesses. His voice was low at first, then rough. He told me I had betrayed him. He told me I had humiliated a sick old woman for attention. He said Hux was using me. He said Orrin Platt was an ambulance chaser, Tilda Rusk was a disgruntled employee, and Ione was confused. Every person who carried truth had to become unreliable in his mouth. That was how he survived. Then he said the line that showed me the bottom of him. After everything I built, he said, you would burn it down for a truck driver? I looked at my father, this man whose brochures praised dignity while his own mother had lived behind an unmarked door, and I felt the old fear leave me so quietly I almost missed it. I did not shout. I did not cry. I did not give him the fight he knew how to win. I said, no, you locked the woman who built it behind a door and called the key leadership. He stepped back like the sentence had weight. For the first time in my life, Garron Crownover had no room ready for his own defense. I went on because some words wait years for the right hallway. You told me no Crownover daughter should build a life around a man who sleeps behind a steering wheel. His jaw tightened. He remembered. Of course he remembered. Cruel people always remember the lines they think landed well. I said, you should have worried about his route. That was all. Not because there was nothing else to say, but because everything else was already moving without me. The court had the petition. The board had the delivery records. The advocate had Ione's statement. The insurer had Hux's route discrepancy report. The local news had the public filings. My father could still raise his voice, but his voice could not reach the places where he was now being judged. He had built his empire with locked doors, controlled documents, and careful silence. It ended because a truck went where it was scheduled to go and a driver kept his receipts. By morning, Crownover Haven Living announced that Garron Crownover would take temporary leave to focus on family matters. By the next week, temporary became indefinite. The probate court froze disputed trust transfers while the accounting moved forward. The original signature pages were requested, and the notary problem did not get smaller under light. The licensing board expanded its review of Ashbel. Adult Protective Services interviewed Ione without Garron, Blythe, Silas, or any Crownover employee present. Tilda Rusk resigned and gave a statement through counsel. Hux's delivery logs became part of a timeline no speech could explain away. My father's friends did what powerful friends do when the weather changes. They stopped answering quickly. Then they stopped answering at all. The Silver Lantern Award was never given that night. It sat in its velvet case on a hotel table until some staff member carried it away like forgotten glass. Ione did not move into our house. That would have been too easy, too neat, too much like a story people tell to make pain useful. She moved first to an independent care residence chosen by the court, and later to a small apartment with support, where she kept African violets on the sill and corrected every nurse who called her sweetie. The first time I visited her without lawyers or advocates, she took my face in both hands and said, I had my grandfather's serious eyes. I did not know what to do with the tenderness, so I cried, and she pretended not to notice until I was ready to laugh at myself. She told me she had tried to write to me for years, but letters disappeared. She had heard about my wedding from Tilda, who had seen a small local announcement online and read it to her quietly. That was how she knew Hux's name. That was how she knew the driver who appeared in her hallway with a wedding band might be the first road back to me. My mother asked to meet 3 months later. We sat in a coffee shop where nobody knew the Crownover name. She looked different without the armor of the house around her, but not free. Freedom is not something a person gets because the truth embarrasses them. It is something they choose before the embarrassment arrives. She told me she had been afraid of Garron, afraid of losing the house, the life, the respect, the story she had helped polish until everyone believed it. I believed her. I also understood that belief was not the same as forgiveness. She said she never wanted to hurt me. I told her she had not needed to want it, she had only needed to keep looking away. That was the last honest conversation we had for a long time. I do not hate my mother. Hate would keep a chair open for her in my life, and I had spent enough years reserving seats for people who did not come. I let her become what she had chosen to be, a woman who almost told the truth several times and chose comfort one time more. Hux kept driving. That surprised some people, which told me they had never understood him. They thought after everything, he would become a symbol, a hero, a man lifted out of his old life by scandal. Hux did not want lifting. He wanted his route, his truck, his thermos of coffee, and the quiet pride of bringing needed things to places that could not wait. He did get better contracts after the investigation, but he never used my father's fall as a sales pitch. When people asked him how it felt to expose Garron Crownover, he shrugged and said, "I just kept the paperwork." That was Hux. No thunder, no victory lap. A man my father called beneath us had done the one thing no one in my family had managed for years. He went where he said he would go, wrote down what he saw, and told the truth when it mattered. I stayed in my job because I had protected the line even when anger begged me to cross it. That mattered more than people understand. Revenge that costs you your own integrity is only another kind of inheritance from the people who hurt you. My father wanted me reckless. He wanted a daughter who would scream, misuse her position, leak the wrong thing, touch the wrong record, and hand him a cleaner story than the one he deserved. I did not give it to him. I gave him forms, filings, route logs, independent review, and the slow patience of institutions doing exactly what they were built to do when nobody powerful could stop them in time. In the end, my name was barely in the articles. Hux's was mentioned as the driver whose records helped reveal discrepancies. Ione's became the name that mattered. Garron's became the name people read twice and then spoke carefully. That was enough. The Crownover house was eventually sold. I drove past it once after the sign went up, not because I missed it, but because I wanted to see whether it looked smaller without the lie around it. It did. Houses built on silence always do when the silence breaks. I thought about the wall of photographs inside, all those handshakes and charity smiles and public proof of private goodness. There had never been a picture of my wedding there. For a long time, that absence hurt like rejection. Now I am grateful for it. My marriage did not belong on that wall. It belonged in the freight yard, in a church hall with folding chairs, in a kitchen full of old delivery sheets, in a back row where a hidden woman stood up and became visible again. My father skipped my wedding to show me that a truck driver was not worthy of the Crownover name. He was right about one thing. Hux was not worthy of that name. He was better than it. Here's what I know now. Some families hide secrets in safes, some in trusts, some in locked rooms with soft curtains and medical charts clipped to the door. My father hid his secret at the end of a route because he forgot something honest workers know better than powerful men. Roads remember. Drivers remember. Paper remembers. A delivery that looks ordinary to one person can become a witness in another person's life. I married a man my father thought was small because he measured people by rooms they could enter. Hux measured life by roads he could finish cleanly. And in the end, the road did what no one in my father's house had been brave enough to do. It went back for the woman he left behind. One wedding, one photo, one route sticker behind my husband's shoulder. My father built locked doors for years, but he forgot that every locked place still needs deliveries, and sometimes the person you mock for driving the road is the one who finally brings the truth home, commentary, lessons, and explanation. Let's slow down and really look at what happened in this story, because this was not just a story about a daughter, a wedding, and a father who felt too proud to attend. On the surface, it looks simple. A rich and powerful father skips his daughter's wedding because she marries a truck driver. He thinks the man is not good enough for the family name. He thinks a truck driver is beneath them. But as the story opens, we quickly realize that the insult is only the first layer. The real danger is not the wedding. The real danger is one small root sticker in one photo. That is what makes this story powerful. The thing the father mocks becomes the same thing that exposes him. The title itself carries the whole emotional hook. My father skipped my wedding because I married a truck driver. Then his root exposed the secret. That title tells us two things at once. First, there is family humiliation. A daughter is rejected on one of the most important days of her life. Second, there is mystery. What secret could a truck root expose? That question pulls the audience forward. It makes us want to know why the father reacted with panic. If he only hated the husband because of class, why did he call 11 times after seeing a photo? That moment tells us the father is not just arrogant. He is afraid. Tenley Crownover is an important kind of main character because she does not win by being louder than her father. She wins by being more careful than him. Many revenge stories make the heroine scream, expose, slap, or publicly destroy someone in a big dramatic moment. But Tenley's strength is different. She watches. She checks. She thinks before acting. She knows that anger can feel powerful, but anger without control can become a trap. This makes her revenge feel more mature. She is not trying to create chaos. She is trying to protect the truth without destroying herself. And that is one of the first big lessons here. Sometimes the people who hurt you are waiting for you to react badly. They want you to shout. They want you to make one wrong move. They want you to look unstable, bitter, or emotional, because then they can ignore what they did and focus on how you reacted. Garron Crownover understands this very well. He knows his daughter works in elder care compliance. He knows that if she uses her position the wrong way, he can turn the entire story against her. He can say she abused her job. He can say she used private knowledge. He can say she attacked him because of family anger. That is why Tenley's restraint matters so much. Her silence is not weakness. Her silence is protection. Huxley Danner, or Hux, is also written in a very meaningful way. He is not secretly a billionaire. He is not secretly a prince. He is not secretly more powerful than everyone in a fantasy way. His strength is ordinary, and that makes it more beautiful. He is a worker. He drives routes. He carries medical supplies. He keeps delivery records. He does his job carefully. The story respects working people. It shows that dignity is not found in expensive suits or family names. Dignity is found in honesty, patience, and responsibility. Hux is the kind of man people underestimate because they only see his truck, his boots, and his work shirt. But what they miss is his discipline. He keeps paperwork. He remembers details. He follows roads other people never think about. In the end, those simple habits become stronger than Garron's money. This is where the truck route becomes more than a plot device. It becomes a symbol. A route is something repeated. It is ordinary. It is not dramatic. A driver takes the same road again and again, dropping off supplies, getting signatures, collecting receipts. Most people would never think of that as power. But the story shows us that truth often travels through ordinary places. It does not always arrive with a police siren or a courtroom speech. Sometimes it comes on a clipboard. Sometimes it comes through a delivery manifest. Sometimes it comes because one honest person kept records when powerful people assumed nobody was watching. The father, Garron Crownover, is a strong villain because his public image is the opposite of his private behavior. He owns a senior care company. He gives speeches about dignity. He is honored for protecting the elderly. He uses soft language, legal language, and family language to hide control. That contrast makes him dangerous. He is not just a rude father. He is a man who knows how to make cruelty look responsible. He knows how to use words like care, safety, distress, and family protection as locks. This is a very real kind of villainy. Some people do not destroy others with open hate. They destroy them with forms, signatures, closed doors, and polite explanations. The hidden grandmother, Ione Crownover, gives the story its deepest emotional twist. At first, Tenley believes her grandmother left the family. That is what she was told as a child. The family story was simple. Ione was difficult, bitter, and distant. But later, Tenley learns that the story was designed to erase a living woman. This changes everything. The secret is not buried in the past, only it is still alive. Ione is alive, isolated, and controlled through legal papers. That makes the revenge feel more urgent. This is not just about exposing what Garron did years ago. It is about helping a woman who is still being harmed. The red folder is another strong story element. It is small, mysterious, and clear. Ione's message, "Tell Tenley the red folder was never signed," works because it gives the audience a puzzle. We do not yet know what the folder means, but we know it matters. It also shows that Ione is not the helpless, confused woman Garron claims she is. She remembers. She understands. She is trying to send proof through the only person who can reach Tenley safely. Hux, the driver. That one sentence gives Ione her voice back before she even appears fully in the story. Blythe, the mother, is not written like a cartoon villain. That makes her more painful. She is not the person who built the whole plan, but she helped protect it. She looked away. She stayed quiet. She chose comfort over truth. Her line, "Your marriage is dragging old dirt onto this family," is important because at first it sounds like class judgment. We think she means Hux is the dirt. Later, we understand she means the route is bringing back a secret. This is smart storytelling because one sentence changes meaning as the audience learns more. It also shows how people in powerful families use coded language. They do not always say, "Stop because we are guilty." They say, "Stop because this will hurt the family." And let's talk about that idea of family. In this story, Garron uses the word family like a shield. Blythe uses it like a cage. Silas Brim uses it like a legal argument. But Tenley slowly learns that family is not the people who demand silence from you. Family is not the people who skip your wedding and then call only when your husband's root threatens their secret. Family is not a name on a house, a wall of photographs, or a chair at a gala. Family is the person who holds your hand under the table when someone insults you. Family is the person who keeps records, tells the truth, and stands beside you when the room turns cold. The story's biggest turn happens when Tenley decides not to go loud. This is the heart of the commentary. She could have posted online. She could have called reporters. She could have walked into the gala with documents in her hand. That would be satisfying for a few minutes. But it could also destroy her credibility. Because she works in elder care compliance, she has to be extremely careful. She cannot use her official access for personal revenge. She cannot touch private records. She cannot look like she is using the state system to punish her father. So instead, she does something much smarter. She uses clean channels. Hux files root discrepancies. Orrin files in probate court. Tenley reports as a private citizen and recuses herself. The Ombudsman and Licensing Board begin their own work. This is not flashy, but it is powerful. This gives us another major lesson. The right process may feel slow, but it protects the truth. When people are powerful, you cannot always defeat them with emotion. You need documentation. You need timing. You need the correct door. If Tenley had acted carelessly, Garron would have changed the subject. But because she acted correctly, he had nowhere easy to run. Every piece of proof came from a clean place. Hux's records were his own. Public filings were public. The court petition came through an attorney. The review came through proper authority. That is why the revenge works. It cannot be dismissed as drama. The gala scene is strong because it brings hypocrisy into the same room as truth. Garron is about to receive an award for elder dignity while the world learns that his own mother may have been hidden and controlled. That is perfect dramatic irony. The audience does not need Tenley to shout. The setting itself exposes him. The Crystal Award, the cameras, the donors, the polished speeches, All of it becomes part of the collapse. The same public image Garron built becomes the stage where his lie falls apart. This is a very effective storytelling technique. Make the villain fall in the exact place where they expected to be celebrated. Hux arriving at the back of the room in his work shirt is one of the most important images in the story. He does not arrive like a rich hero. He does not need a suit. He arrives as the man Garron insulted. He arrives from the root. And beside him is Ione, the woman Garron wanted hidden. This image says more than a speech could. The truck driver did not bring revenge in his hands. He brought visibility. He brought the person who had been turned into paperwork back into the public room. That is why the moment is emotionally powerful. Ione standing there is not just evidence. She is a person reclaiming space. The hallway confrontation gives the story its final emotional release. Garron says, "After everything I built." That line tells us how he sees the world. He thinks building means owning, controlling, and taking credit. Tenley answers, "You lock the woman who built it behind a door and called the key leadership." This is not only an insult, it is an explanation of his whole life. He did not build with honor. He controlled what someone else created. He turned care into business and family into property. Then Tenley returns the original insult with the line, "You should have worried about his route." This is a strong revenge line because it completes the circle. At the start, Garron mocked Hux for driving. At the end, the driving is what exposed him. The aftermath is also important because it does not become too perfect. Ione does not magically move into Tenley's house and heal everything in one day. Blythe does not suddenly become a perfect mother. Garron does not disappear in one dramatic scene. The legal process continues. The trust is reviewed. The investigation moves forward. This makes the ending feel more grounded. Real justice often moves slowly. It does not always look like instant punishment. Sometimes justice is simply the first honest review after years of lies. The lesson from Blythe is hard but important. Being afraid does not erase the harm caused by silence. Many people stay quiet because they are scared, dependent, or tired. We can understand that, but understanding is not the same as excusing. Blythe had many chances to tell the truth. She almost does, again and again. But each time, she chooses comfort. The story does not punish her in a loud way. It simply lets Tenley stop waiting for her. That is a powerful emotional boundary. Sometimes healing means accepting that some people will never become brave enough to love you correctly. The biggest life lesson from this story is this: never measure a person only by their job title, their clothes, or the kind of work they do. Garron saw a truck driver and thought he saw weakness. He did not see discipline. He did not see memory. He did not see records. He did not see the quiet dignity of a person who does honest work every day. Many people make this mistake in real life. They respect people with titles and ignore people with tools, uniforms, routes, aprons, gloves, and tired hands. But life often moves because of those people. Hospitals need drivers. Care homes need supplies. Families need workers. Truth itself sometimes travels through the hands of people society barely notices. Another lesson is that documentation matters. Feelings are real, but records protect them. Tenley's pain alone could not expose Garron. Hux's anger alone could not help Ione. But delivery logs, signatures, court filings, public records, and clean reports created a path. This is not just a story lesson. It is a life lesson. When something feels wrong, write it down. Keep receipts, save dates, notice names. Protect yourself with facts, not just emotion. Calm people with records are difficult to destroy. The story also teaches us that quiet revenge is not about doing nothing. Quiet revenge means choosing the move that cannot be easily attacked. It means letting the truth travel through the right channel. It means refusing to give the villain the reaction they want. Tenley does not win because she is passive. She wins because she is precise. She knows when to speak, when to wait, when to report, and when to step back. That is a rare kind of strength. In the end, this story is not really about a truck. It is about a road back to the truth. Garron built locked doors. Hux drove routes. Garron trusted silence. Tenley trusted process. Garron used family as a weapon. Ion's return proved that family cannot survive when it is built on erasure. The final message is simple but strong. The people powerful families mock may be the same people carrying the proof. And the life they call small may be the road that brings the truth home. The end.